Matter of fact, I signed this business plan yesterday, and I just left work about an hour ago and signed a silver client this afternoon. So I'm ending my week on a real high note. So,
Hey, fantastic. It's always good to end a week on a high note like that. Two clients.
and yep, I'm jazzed.
Okay, great. Hey, Mark, can you see the planning screen on your system?
Uh, yeah, I see. Looks like it says success, and then I see 01. Um, uh,
And
so
then
I
you've
guess
got
that's
main activity, your mission, USP, and then you've got down below you've got your notes, your action steps.
right. Yeah. Okay.
And
Got
down
it.
the far right hand corner you can see a red exit button. Yes?
Okay. Is that the one at the bottom right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you can see all that. Fantastic. Left hand side, you can see three questions: 01 business direction, 02 business overview, and 03 financial structures over the left hand side.
Right. Okay.
You can see all those?
Yep.
Okay, let's get started then. Okay, so part of the obviously part of the call today is to give you an understanding of the system because you've got a new client on board and you want to make sure that when you take them through it, you're obviously not looking or trying to work it out yourself at the same time that you're giving your client confidence in what they're doing.
Right.
So let's look at the how the screen's broken up. So the screen's broken up into a number of key areas, and the standards used all the way through the system. So down the right-hand side, we have a number of buttons. So currently we're on button number 1, which is you'll see a little circle with an arrow, and also in the middle of the screen you'll see a little circle and an arrow, and then to the left of the questioning area you'll see a circle and arrow. So it tells you which area you're on. So this one, little house, a little shop face. So as you work your way down, it shows you what area you're on. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep.
So we're on the first. So what the idea is that when you're working with a client, you go through it sequentially. So you work your way from the top all the way down through to the bottom to the strategy section, and then by the time you get to here, you're finished doing the whole process with the client. So
Okay.
if you tend to say go here, and you then say, okay, let's look at your products and services, let's go back to your competitors. The challenge when you skip backwards and forwards is that the system has been designed that you're filling in information at the top that may be used later on. So if you don't
Mm-hmm.
fill that information first, then what happens is you're going to come across some blank areas later on. So the best thing to do, of course, is to then do it in a sequential process. So the
Okay.
sequential process is working your way through each of the buttons. So if I go back to button 1, so back to this is our first screen or starter screen. So if I go back to button 1, you'll also see a big 01. So that 01 relates to the question 1 on the left-hand side. So the question areas on the left-hand side will change as we go down through each button. You'll see that now the questions are a different set of questions and relate to this one here, which is about the business. If I go down to the flag, which is your goals, you'll see the questions on the left-hand side change again.
Okay.
Yep, so let me go back to the beginning. So generally the idea is that we go to the first button and then you just work your way through question 1, question 2, question 3. And then once you finish the last
Okay.
question, then you work your way to the next button, and then you'd work your way through question 1, question 2, question 3, so forth, and you just keep going backwards and forwards as you go down through the areas. Now with a
Okay.
single,
So just to make sure I'm clear, Nick, we're actually going to go top to bottom, and each button we come down populates those questions then over on the left,
correct,
right?
yeah,
And okay, and then we hit, and each time we move down one of those, it populates questions. Now, I guess what I'm seeing is it looks like there's, like for example, on this first one, I see main activity, your mission, and USP, and I see some content already there. So the idea, does this mean that if we had uh, specific content, that we would just replace what's there? If we didn't, we would leave what is there. Is that kind of
yeah.
the thinking there?
everything will be blank. So the middle white section, so that white section is where data gets entered. So
Right.
that
Okay.
white section, if, for example, if this was a brand new client that you were working with, the white section the question main activity, the infill box would be blank. So
Okay.
at no stage would you have the system pre-populated. So what this is an example client of the Design One concreting, and the reason why I use an example is because it just gives a bit more detail on screen rather than just being totally blank. So I use this as an example when
Fine.
I'm going through the coaching process.
Okay. So then again, to stop you here, then, if one of the first things we've got to have is a mission statement. So, and I see a mission and a USP. So this is obviously a client with neither one of those. Would we have advisedly done some work on this prior to sitting down so that
No,
we don't, in other
Jimmy,
words,
sorry.
that's all right. I'm just trying to figure out, because my other question is, what all does this client need to have on the day that we sit down to do this? In other words, I should probably have her do some things in advance before we sit down, right?
If it's a if When you go onto the Action Coach wiki, under wiki systems, and I think it's under the coaching, and then you'll see a system that says new planning stuff. There'll be an area which will have what you can send to your clients prior to them coming to the event, or prior to them working with you on this. However, saying that, even though there is a list of what the client could bring, the
Mm-hmm.
client in fact could turn up with just themselves.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you can imagine for a moment, we have a brand new client, as you're saying. So the client doesn't have a mission statement and doesn't have a USP. Over the course of the time that you're working with the client, then what we do is we start supporting the client in the development of a first stage mission statement and a first stage USP. And it may
Mm-hmm.
not be exactly right. However, given that this portal remains accessible by you or your client um, over time, which means that you can engage your client in, say, 3 months, every 90 days, or every 60 days, or every year, to then let's go back and revisit some of these things and tighten them up. But let's just pretend for a moment that you have a brand new client. They don't have a mission and they don't have a USP. The idea is that this first port of call is okay. So let's look at a mission that's more maybe aligned to, and I'm going to use a military mission as an example. So if you're in the military and you've got a leader there, the leader might say, okay, we're going to take that hill and we're going to do it by day 3 of the campaign, with no casualties, and that puts us in a forward position. So, with regards to a small business owner or a business owner where they may not have a mission or their mission is unclear, then the mission could simply be, as an example, a coffee shop. The mission is to gain 100 clients that interact with us each day over a 5-day period. So we get a revenue base of a monthly revenue base of X, Y, Z. That could be
Mm-hmm.
a simple 12-month mission. So the
Okay.
idea is not to get too hung up on the classic mission, which is what I call more of an esoterical mission, where we want to hang it on the wall and everybody feels nice and fluffy about us, and it's more of a client feel good statement rather than what I would call an actual mission statement. Now, the idea of the mission statement here is that if it is, for example, the coffee shop example, and we're saying, okay, we want X number of clients per day, which will equate to a monthly revenue of this, with a repeat business of this, then if we use that as a mission statement, we can then construct the whole of the plan behind the scenes as we go down each button based on that's what we want.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the USP could be very simple in the fact that if you look at it, okay, so what's one thing that would make the coffee shop unique? Is it the way we greet our customers when they come into the coffee shop? Is it the colours of our menus that make us unique? So, what is a simple
Mm-hmm.
thing, or what is a thing that we can make us unique in the starting gate? It says this is a new business, and then you and your client can work on that over time as you develop the coaching relationship, and then you can come back into this area, and the client can then populate this for the production of a plan sometime in the future.
Okay. So, all right, that's because this is actually a brand new business too at that. So
Yeah.
this client has none of that.
Mm-hmm. So if you look
Great.
at it, what is the business? As if you can just give me not the name of the
It's going to
business.
be a ladies' clothing boutique.
Yeah. So if you look at the mission of the ladies' clothing boutique, it could be to gain X number of clients within the first 12 months of operation. That could be the mission. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you have a
Mm-hmm.
look at it, that then really defines it for that business owner. Say, okay, what is the key thing we need to achieve over the course of the next 12 months?
Right. Okay.
And then the USP can be, if you look at it as a women's clothing business, the USP could be that every client um, leaves uh, leaves the business with a feeling of a higher level of self worth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we don't need to spend 1 or 2 days developing the mission statement, the USP, but what we do need is we need to get a little bit of forward direction for the business owner without spending um, 2 hours on this. This screen here should really be um, over and done with within about 30 minutes
Okay.
at
All
the
right.
tops. Yeah, and then of course the main activity is straightforward. Women's clothing business, for example, if that's the main activity. So it could be a women's clothing business located in the XYZ geographical area, serving customers of this type. That could be the main
Okay.
activity. So once that's done, then we can move towards the rest of the plan. Now, the key thing here is to just you're supporting your client in moving through and not getting stuck. So, part of your main area, if you look at the 2 day PowerPoint that's also on the wiki system, if you look at the 2 day PowerPoint, there's some action coach stuff which helps the clients get into the right headspace as a business owner. It talks about some of the key things above the line, below the line, what have you. Part of your role as a coach here is to just make sure that the client gets clarity as they're doing this. They don't get stuck on a particular area. We complete the areas as we go through. We understand that some clients might get into a little bit of level of confusion, but as a coach, we're here to support them getting through that and then putting something a little bit worthwhile into some of these boxes.
Okay. Great.
Yep, does that make sense? A bit of a long-winded
Yep.
example, but the first area is the important one because that's going to set up the headspace of the owner as to what they're working towards during the rest of the plan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So generally,
Good.
if I'll just go through the screens for you, so you understand what you're looking at. So you've got the navigation buttons down the right-hand side, which are the major areas of the business plan. As you navigate through each one of those buttons, the left-hand side then presents you with the questions for that area of the business. The middle white box is where the information gets filled in. So always the information is going to be filled in this area here. You've got an information area underneath the graphical icon, which lets you know you're on the home screen, or lets you know which screen you're on. It lets you know which question, the icon. It will also um, give the details of the client's business. So in this particular plan we're looking at on screen here, the business plan is for Design One Concreting. And it will have then the advisor's details as well. It'll have your name, generally your phone number, and some small details about you as the advisor, so the client's always getting reinforced as to who they're working with. Now,
Okay. Now, do I input that at some point early on, or?
what happens is that when you go onto the iCoach Tools /planning URL, you can go in there and you can order the quantity of access that you want. If you want one, there's availability to do one. If you want 5 or 10 or 15, the pricing structure changes.
Right.
But once you place that order, then what happens is it comes through to our office here, and then the programmer, the programming team will go in and they'll set you up, and then they'll forward you an email that has your client's login details. So generally, when you do order, you order with the client's business name. However, if you don't have the client's business name and you were to order one or a number of the access rights, what will happen is the first time that the client goes in, will request the name of the business.
Okay.
And then what it will do is it will populate that middle area on your behalf.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what happens is, as you work your way through, when you get towards the end, you notify us that you're finished. And what we do is we go through the system and have a look at it and see what needs to be modified, and then we produce the final plan for you. There is also the ability to produce a draft plan along the way, so you can produce any number of draft plans. The difference between the draft plan and the final plan is normally that we populate certain areas like table of contents and what have you to match in with the plan itself. But there's the availability of you to produce, if you want to do a draft plan, have a look at what it looks like, to then go back and make some modifications, you can do that as well. Normally, if you complete each of the areas and you infill a decent amount of data, then the plan will come out looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does that all make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, now down the bottom here, you'll see, now this area here is instructions, overview, and actions. So everything below this line is instructions, overview, and actions, and it relates to the area that you happen to be on at the time. Now, not every single area is giving instructions, because there are a number of areas that are self-explanatory. But I'll just show you how this works. So this here, the little graph with you'll see the button in the black area, to the right of the black area, which is the strategy section. That is the last of the major sections of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
So below this area, instructions, overview, actions, you've got three other buttons. You've got information, which is information about the question. So you've got what was the question about. You've got other support information, which in the strategy area we don't have. I'll go back to the beginning for a second. So you have other supportive information here. And the most important one is just above the red button. The most important area is where your client can insert what we call coaching notes.
Hmm.
So, for example,
okay, now
you go on.
I was just trying to follow which button you were pushing, because I see you've got the one with the question mark in the cloud is for what now?
Is the one with the question mark in the cloud. That's information about each question that you're on. So you'll see here, business direction gives you a little bit of an overview of business direction, main activities, your mission.
Okay.
The secondary button may go into more details. So sometimes it'll give you additional details or examples or pointers towards how you complete those questions.
Okay. And then the next button down with the I in it, what does that?
That is the I. So you've got the question mark, which is on each question, which is what that question means. So see here,
Okay.
main activity says, when constructing this statement, pretend that you're explaining what your business does to a complete stranger. So that gives you, the instructions. When I go to the button with the I on it, you'll see here that it says main activity example. So business names offers a broad range of coffee and espresso products, all from high quality. So that's giving you an example of that question filled in.
Okay.
So additional I stands for additional information. So the question mark stands for what is this? I is additional information. And then you've got a button which is looks like a page. That's your coaching notes. So that's a notes page.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I go onto that notes page, now this notes page, you'll see here on the right hand side, see how it's got a straight horizontal bar with an up and down arrow?
Right.
As we populate that and as that grows, it'll go beyond the screen, which means we can then scroll.
Mm-hmm.
just as this one here. See this area here when I'm in main activity, you'll see the scroll bar. When I've entered into the information has gone over. So you'll see how that scrolls.
Yep, yep.
Yep. So wherever you see a bar like this one, or a bar like these, it means that you can add information beyond the length of that screen.
Okay.
Yeah. And it just means it'll scroll. So this one here, you can have any number of notes, action steps, and so forth, because it'll just keep scrolling.
Right, and that wouldn't necessarily then be printed in the plan. That's just for my use.
Yeah, so this is not printed in the plan. This is a separate printout, which then gives
Mm-hmm.
you a printout of, and I'll just do an example here. So notes, mission may need further work.
Yeah,
Yep.
great.
And then you put in the action steps, John and Julie to so John and Julie, I can't spell for the life of me. So you can see it's got a spell check in here.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. So you can go in and spell check. So wherever it leaves a red line underneath, you can go in and spell check that as they go through. So John and Julie to get together to assess direction for an enhanced mission statement. And when we come into this one here, you'll see that when I hit the arrow, it's got, okay, what area does it fall under? So I'm going to put this one, I'm going to put this as business direction. It's
Okay.
about the direction of the business. And then this one here is a date. And okay, so we're going to get together on May 6th.
Okay.
So what happens is that when and this area will just keep growing. It might say, so for example, USP development, and then you would put in some text around that. Again, could be John Mark to build this. And then we go, okay, what again is it? So this one was again business direction. And going to get together. I'm going to do that one relatively soon. So I'm doing the 30th. And then it just keeps building as you go.
Okay. Yeah, sooner or later that starts scrolling down then too, right?
Yeah, so then that starts scrolling down and you get to add more. Now the thing with this, as you go through, so if I was to go, so that's that area there, but if I was then to go through then into the goals area and go to that box, you'll see that the same information is presented. So you just go to the end and then just type what you need to do here. So for example, become main builder. So main builder for, we got here, local area, and then get together with Mark, and let's look at get together with Mark and going on A, B, C class of customer. Yep. So this one then, when we hit the down arrow, we go, okay, this one is about what we're going to do, products and services, our market, customers. So we're going to put customers down for this one. And I'm going to do that again with Mark on the 30th because it was pretty important. Now, see how we're scrolling? Scrolling, yep. So what happens here, the reason why these areas are important is because when we do a printout, so what happens is you've got your plan, but you've also got this action area that we print out. And then that becomes your coaching guide around what you've done with the client during the course of this 1 day or 2 day activity.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that make sense?
And it sure does. Now, could either one of us, in other words, if we're doing this together, I'll be doing some of this input, but if we were in a workshop, would the client be entering this as well, or would it
Yeah,
And in
so
other
if
words,
you
they probably would, wouldn't they?
Yeah, so if you can imagine what happens is you spend 10 minutes in front of the room because as you go through the PowerPoint, you spend your 10 minutes on a particular topic. So you might spend 10 minutes around the goals area. And it ranges. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 15 minutes that you spend in front of the room. And then what happens is that you then walk around the room and you see what they're doing and you're interacting with the people in the room and they're saying, well, I'm having difficulty with regards to the mission statement. And then you might do a bit of a process in front of the room. You might jump up there and go, okay, let's look at a straightforward mission statement, and you might do the coffee shop or the military example that I gave you. And then what happens is you say to that person, say, okay, look, what I want you to do is just put down there in your notes section. Let's go down there now. In your notes section, I want you to go mission statement development. You two guys get together with me on our first coaching session, which will, now if you don't have a coaching session with this client set up, then you might say, okay, what we do when we deliver the plan to you, we'll talk to you about coaching and how this will fit in with developing some of these areas of your business. So let's put a date down here of XYZ and put that under whatever heading it is. And you do that during the course of the whole of the 2 days if it's a 2-day workshop. Now, if you're doing it one-on-one with a client, then you would do it during the course of that one-on-one session that you're building the client's plan. So this is giving them pointers as to the areas that they need to further work on with regards to the whole of this structure, or the working on their business, working on the plan, working on key areas that they don't know anything about, as they would if you were coaching them. So, for example, if you were coaching a client and they didn't know what their their average value of sale was, you might give them a process as to how they work on that, and they may then gather that information over a few weeks if you were doing coaching. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So the key areas we've got here is that you've got the buttons down the right-hand side, which are navigation. You've got the infill screen, which is where the data is entered. You have the major questions down the left-hand side. You have the 3 buttons down the bottom here, which is information about the particular question, further information or examples. Then you've got your coaching area here, which you want to have that area reasonably robust by the course of by the finalisation of this, because you want to have some ability to coach. Now, the great thing about this whole system is that if you do work with a client in this way, you'll get intimate knowledge of what the business does and doesn't know, and where the business owners need to work on their business. And it'll then print this out, and it'll print it out underneath the heading. So if there's 10 items in the business direction, you'll have business direction, it'll do the 10 items. If you have, say, 4 items on the goals, it'll print the 4 items on the goals. So it'll do headings and subheads to give you things into the right area.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll go back to question number 1. So the key thing is that not to get overwhelmed by what you're seeing on screen, because realistically, if you have a look at it, we've got a button, we've got some questions, and we've got some data that needs to be completed.
Mm-hmm.
And you just got to work your clients through it. So what I will do is I'll just go through each major button now, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay, so the first area is about it's generally a setup area, so that's why it's home, because you've got some key setups. You've got main activity, mission, and USP as a setup. If I go down to the business overview, this is now setting up how the plan's going to be constructed. So the client's logo, date business established. Now it's a date business established or to be established.
Mm-hmm.